It's Hughes News. Hughes News. It's Hughes News. Hughes News. Hugh Grant News. Hughes News. It's Hughes News.
Hello, Hugh Grant fans, and welcome to Hughes News, a Taking Hugh for Granted bonus podcast. Hughes News aims to keep you right up to date with everything Hugh Grant, from an announcement he's signed on to do a new project, right down to him doing a particularly saucy tweet. If it's big Hugh Grant news, we want you to know about it. The big news today is fans are rejoicing at the new trailer for Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, and the return of Hugh Grant as Daniel Cleaver. I'm Diggory and to discuss this and so much more with me, I'm joined by fellow Horse and Hound correspondent Oscar Bimmelgray. Oscar, how the bloody hell are you doing today, mate?
I'm doing very well, Diggs. Thanks for having me, as always. I think I've decided that I might like the Hughes News intro better than our actual intro.
Yeah, it is good, isn't it? It's so much better. Maybe there's something to be done about that. Our other intro is just long. It's just long, isn't it?
I think it came out in a sort of pre-Instagram reel age where everything something could be longer than a minute and hold people's attention. And now we have an attention span of about 15 seconds.
But that one, it's punchy, it's grabby. I think, actually, when did we launch Hughes News? It probably was a year or two after we did Taking You for Granted. And so maybe we learn a lot in the process, like you say. And what the people want, they want punchy, they want snappy. And speaking of punchy and snappy, we've got a punchy, snappy, attention-grabbing trailer for Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy. Oscar, before we get into talking about the trailer, what do we know so far about the film?
Well, we know that this is the fourth installment of the Bridget Jones series. We obviously had Bridget Jones's Diary, Bridget Jones, The Edge of Reason. Those were 2001 and 2004. And then there was the big gap until we had Bridget Jones's Baby in 2016. And now we've been left hanging for another 9 years for this next installment, Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, which will be coming out on Valentine's Day in cinemas. But I believe a day before on Peacock, which is NBC's streaming channel. So interesting that they got that in. So if you're really keen to see it, or I don't know whether you can watch that Peacock outside of the US, but anyway, if you're an American listener, you will be able to access it a day early if you can't wait.
Well, I can't wait. So what the hell am I going to do about that? Maybe I'll have to make a lovely trip to the US. Maybe a Valentine's gift for me, if anyone's listening that wants to give me a Valentine's gift. Leora. If she listens to, you know what, my girlfriend, she listens to this to help her fall asleep.
Love that. Does she really want to listen to your voice even more?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's exactly it. She listens to it and she's like, oh, that's just really boring. Perfect. There it goes. There I go off to sleep. So that's good. Anyway, but I'll tell you what we didn't find boring is this trailer. So talk to me, Oscar. What did you think about the trailer? What did you think about the trailer?
Well, I mean, it is, you could say, jarring to see Hugh Grant reprising Daniel Cleaver after all this time. Yeah. Let's be honest, all the cast members, they're not young folk anymore. They are getting on a bit, but that, I guess, is part of the story. Bridget Jones is now a mother. She has 2 children who I believe are her kids from her relationship with Mark Darcy. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
But I mean, a big talking point I think is going to be the fact that Mark Darcy is dead.
Yeah, I don't think in the sort of Daniel Cleaver, he's dead at the beginning of the third film, but actually at the end there's a newspaper article that says he's alive.
Exactly.
I think Mark Darcy's actually dead.
I mean, Colin Firth fans are going to be fuming at this because we thought that Daniel Cleaver was a dead man. In the third film, obviously, we had his funeral, although we were left with that little tidbit at the end which said Daniel Cleaver has been found alive. So the door was opened for a return. But the fact that we've gone now to Daniel Cleaver alive and Mark Darcy dead, I mean, that's maybe something that Colin Firth fans are going to be a little up in arms about. Yeah,
we're delighted. I'm not going to lie. That's really good for us. I mean, although don't despair too much. Perhaps Colin Firth fans or Colin Firth Things First fans, don't despair too much, because I believe he will be in the film, and he's in the same way in the trailer, in a sort of maybe you could call it flashback, maybe you could call it vision sort of thing. Bridget's imagination. So I think he will feature. How much he'll feature, we'll have to see. And similar with Hugh Grant, he sort of hinted at the fact that maybe Daniel Cleaver won't be in the film so much. But what else about the trailer did you like? Because it starts with that sort of sad realization and the sad that Mark's not going to be there anymore. But it quite quickly goes into classic Bridget Jones.
Yes, I think. Without want to be too much of a dampener on this film.
Okay.
I'm not going into this with particularly high hopes of it being a great film. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, it's going to be a bit of fun. I think this really will be the last dance, shall we say, for the Bridget Jones series. I mean, we all the similar themes that keep people coming back will be there. Bridget making mistake after mistake, falling for terrible men like Daniel Cleaver. The one bit I did catch on to, which did tickle me a little bit, was the fact that one of Bridget Jones's sons calls Daniel Cleaver uncle. Did you notice that?
Yes. So I've done some reading around this, and it sounds like, and maybe we should talk about this in what a context about Hugh Grant in this film, because famously in Bridget Jones's Baby, they invited Hugh Grant back, and Hugh Grant, just kept reading the scripts that they sent, and he just kept saying, this isn't right, and then eventually he just pulled out of it altogether. And then they came up with the storyline with Patrick Dempsey and all that sort of stuff, and we have the film we got today. But with this one, Hugh Grant was sent the script, and he said, it's fine but not great. And he said, I felt that I didn't really, there's no obvious role for him in the film, but they wanted to cram him in, basically, is his words. And he said that he felt that Daniel Cleaver needed a third dimension. He's in his 60s now. You can't just have him smoothing his way down King's Road, eyeing up all the young girls. So Hugh himself went away and invented a rather good interim story, as he says himself, which they approved. And basically, he rewrote all of his own scenes. We didn't do much work. He was apparently only did about a week's worth of work, actually on set. But I think Bridget and Daniel Cleaver are sort of friends now. So, like you say, Bridget's son calls him uncle. But
so is he a good guy now?
Well. You see, this is what I think is good about the trailer, because in that scene, you're quite right, Oscar. You're like, well, is he a good guy? Because they're friends. That's good. But also the kid's like, oh, where are the girls? And he's like, oh, they're with the big hair. Yes, they're going and they're washing each other's hair. And he's like, really? And he goes, yes, they wash each other's hair. So clearly he's got things. He's still a bad boy. And also in the trailer, Bridget Jones, her husband dies. All of her friends are like, you've got to get out and shag again. And that's where it goes straight back to being classic Bridget Jones. And even Daniel Cleaver says to her, you've been you're basically effectively a nun, a very, very naughty nun. So maybe they will fall for each other again, even if briefly, and if they are still friends.
Whenever the word nun comes out of Hugh Grant's mouth, not that it has come out of his mouth many times, I just picture him in Paddington 2 with his nun outfit on, which is an all-time great look, it's got to be said.
So good, yeah. And I love the line in that as well, where the security guard is running after them going, we need to catch that incredibly good-looking nun, or whatever. It's so good. It's amazing. Yeah. One thing that we haven't mentioned yet is the love affair that will take place in this film. So we've got 29-year-old, or at least he's 29 in the trailer, Leo Goodall in this. So it looks like Mad About the Boy might be, this young man that she might have a dalliance with. What do you think about all that?
Well, I was about to ask you the same thing, Diggs. Fans of White Lotus will be watching closely. Leo Goodall, I believe. I haven't watched the series myself. I feel like I'm the only person on earth who hasn't.
That makes two of us, to be fair.
Although really?
I've heard so much about it. The intro song and all that sort of stuff. I feel like I have seen it.
Yeah,
it's apparently disgusting and
Yeah.
very sexy.
Well, you know what? I think we both were on the same page about in the last film we weren't massive fans of Patrick Dempsey as the love affair guy. Oh, we have the same mug today. Look at that.
They're taking Hugh for granted mug, everyone.
Yeah.
One day they'll be available for sale.
Exactly. But I think he has the makings of a good sort of younger love affair. He even from that trailer, like just the one line, it was convincing enough for me. And then she's also going to have this other kind of love affair, it seems like, with Chiwetel Ejiofor, who of course we know from Love Actually.
Yes,
yeah, that's a throwback. I'm sure he's been in a lot of other stuff since that, rather than crediting him from just that film. But I like that dynamic in the trailer. It's hard to tell, isn't it? But what did you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and also what I think is interesting about this film as well is that, so the writer of the books, Helen Fielding, who also co-writes the films as well, this book that she's basing it on, Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy, I think we mentioned this in our previous episode when this film was announced, it's based partly on her own life, because her husband, she married a screenwriter and they had kids together, and he passed away. And so she wrote a book about it, and then the more she wrote the book, the more she realised this character is just Bridget Jones. So she had that happen in this. And it's interesting because Hugh Grant has said, this script is brilliant, and I love it, and it made me cry. And he said it's really funny, but really, really moving. It's very, very sad. And interestingly, people who know Leo Goodall might know him from One Day, and that is another. It's like romantic, maybe 6 or 12 episodes on Netflix. The story taking place on the same day every year, about this couple. And I remember my my girlfriend's sister watching it with us, and she'd already seen it, and she cried her eyes out. And she even just watching it again, honestly, it hadn't even happened yet, the sad thing, and she cried her eyes out. So I think, from what we saw in the trailer, it's so Bridget Jones, it's so fun, it's so vibrant and all that sort of stuff, and it's silly, she climbs up a tree and then that hot guy's Leo Goodall's at the bottom of it, and she's like, oh, I've climbed a magic boy tree or whatever, and it's all good fun. But, we've seen his range in One Day. We can see how maybe this might get quite tear-jerky, so it's exciting to think about.
Yeah, I feel you, Diggs. I think that the trailer is going to get bums on seats, but we might be hit bang slap in the face with some tear jerking stuff on Valentine's Day. So this I'm looking forward to that. And I mean, the other thing of note I feel like is that all these actors are busy people, but this film has attracted 9 of the original cast who were in the 2001 Bridget Jones film. So I think that's something to be said about maybe like the feeling that people have for this franchise, the feeling that the actors have for it. That they got the band together because Hugh's in it, Colin's in it, Emma Thompson, of course, Jim Broadbent and Gemma Jones are playing Bridget's parents. Yeah, and then I think all of Bridget's friends also come back. Yes. So and obviously Renee Zellweger herself. Who we are huge fans of on this podcast.
Huge fans.
So, I think the fact that they all want to get back together for one last hurrah is something to be said for what is, as I think I said on our last episode about Bridget Jones, our last Hughes News rendition, this is maybe the best rom-com franchise ever.
Yeah. I mean, name a bigger, name a better one. Like you say, it's coming out a day early on Peacock. Now, I mean, I know that sounds silly, but it's like, at least for us, it's a huge export. It's like, what other British-made rom-com that's so, inherently British will get that sort of attention worldwide and be loved all over, but also, like you say, which is a great point, by the actors themselves and by the people working on it, that they all are so excited to get back and get on set and return to these characters. It's so amazing, particularly Renee Zellweger, who is a literal Oscar winner now. So it's amazing that she's just sort of like, I'm back to it. I love it. You know what? Let me ask you this before we move on, because there's other bits of huge news. But if one thing could happen in this film, maybe it could be Hugh Grant related, maybe not. But what do you want to see? What would you love to see in this film? And it can't be, sadly, well, maybe it can be Hugh Grant and Mark Darcy having another fight, maybe another flashback.
Yeah, well, there was a clip surfacing around on the internet this week of Hugh talking again about that fight. His two famous fights, of course, them sort of, posh boys trying to smack the shit out of each other in the street. I mean, it would be too obvious to say that, Hugh and Renee have a little romance. I think what I would say is that I want to see the characters happy at the end. It's a little cliche, nice. But I feel like it would be nice to sign off with everyone kind of, riding into the sunset, and there's a happy ending to this sort of roller coaster life of Bridget Jones.
Right. I think the next piece of news, though, we've already mentioned Paddington 2, and we have another roles reprisal. We've obviously got Daniel Cleaver, him taking that role up again, but Hugh Grant is, and it's out, Hugh Grant is Phoenix Buchanan again.
Incredible stuff, Diggs. I mean, should we be surprised? Probably not. I mean, I think Hugh loved playing Phoenix Buchanan. I think it was, a moment in his career where it opened up a whole new set of possibilities for him, and I think he realized that he would have a new lease of life in his acting career once he played that character. The sad thing is, of course, is that we haven't seen it, and I can't believe, and no one has pirated it and put it on the internet for us. That's a very disappointing thing. So we should probably just say what it is to start off with. So Paddington 3, or Paddington in Peru as it's called, has been released in the UK at least in cinemas. So you can go along and see that. Much beloved franchise, another much beloved franchise. And although Hugh is not in the actual movie itself, he has made another cameo in the credits as Phoenix Buchanan. I believe he is in a jail again, performing Goldilocks. That's what I've read. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think so. My understanding is that, and this maybe is spoilers for Paddington in Peru. So everyone, if you don't want spoilers for Paddington in Peru, skip ahead a little bit. But essentially, things all end well, if you can imagine. So they go to Peru, and actually Paddington brings a load of his pals back with him, all his little bear pals. And they all need names too. So he's showing them around London, and he's showing them here, there, and everywhere. And they go to prison as well. And they're like, why is he going to prison? Because he wants them to meet his friend, Phoenix Buchanan, who Phoenix is saying, he's like, oh, I'd love you guys. You'd be perfect for our performance of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And they all talking about in this little post-credit sequence, they all need names. Paddington's named after Paddington Station. So they all start naming all the bears, things like Clapham North, Clapham South, things like that. So they all get little fun little names. It's very sweet. And so I haven't seen it yet either, even though I am in the UK, but Oscar hasn't seen it. Obviously, you being in Canada. So we're saying, guys, we're sorry we can't review it yet. But this Christmas, it's still in the cinema. Oscar and I will be in the same country. We'll do our best to see it together, and then we can give you guys a full review of the film and Hugh Grant's little cameo at the end.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's becoming a bit of a tradition to watch Hugh Grant at Christmas. I mean, if it's not Love Actually, he was in Wonka last year, and now this, even if it's just a little cameo. So, I mean, there's no complaints about Phoenix Buchanan coming back. That is an all-time legendary character.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of legendary things, we've actually got another piece of Hugh's news here, and another legendary character, all surrounding the Oscars. I don't know if you saw this, Oscar, but a couple of weeks ago, Hugh Grant presented an honorary Oscar to Richard Curtis. Richard Curtis, of course, the writer of Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, actually the first Bridget Jones film as well. So, many people think that Richard Curtis, Hugh Grant owes his career to him because of Four Weddings, But so there's this thing called the Academy's 15th Governors Awards, whatever those are, and at those they give out honorary Oscars to people. So Richard Curtis got an honorary Oscar, and Hugh Grant did a sort of 7-8 minute speech where he presented this award to him, and obviously in classic Hugh Grant style, it was incredibly complimentary, but in a very savage way. he sort of retold the story about the fact when he auditioned for Weddings and a Funeral, how the director loved him, the money people loved him, everyone loved him, the producer loved him. The one person that didn't love him was Richard Curtis, and actually was like, I do not want this man to be in my film. And then Hugh Grant said, "This is the arsehole who we are going to honour tonight." He ended his whole speech saying, "Honorary Oscar? Is it really an Oscar? It's a better than nothing Oscar." And then Richard Curtis, when he came up on stage to accept the award, hit back saying, "I wondered how Hugh would turn his unsatisfactory character in order to present me with this prize, and he didn't bother. He's never been able to act much, and it would have been beyond his scope." He went on to, I know, yeah. He went on to recommend Heretic as a great documentary about Hugh's home life. But in amongst all of this, it's worth noting, and this is the interesting bit for us, is that Hugh did say he loved Richard very much and that they should do one more film together. Oh. So, again, I'm going to ask you again, what would, if they were going to do another film together, what would you want it to be?
Wow, I mean,
or be like?
Both, I would, 10 years ago, we might have said Hugh can't do anything but rom-coms and Richard Curtis can't write anything but rom-coms. But I don't know Richard Curtis's work as well, but I believe he has branched off into, maybe not your most traditional rom-coms. Like he wrote Yesterday, the song about the Beatles, the film about the Beatles, which is, obviously has rom-com elements to it, but it's not completely sort of, Notting Hill-like. It's hard to see them not, it's hard to see them not be doing something that involves romance, though. I feel like if that was to happen, he would have to play like some kind of grandpa figure, At this point, they can't go back to sort of, can't rewind the clock to make Hugh 40 and, and that would just be creepy. So, I don't know, I feel like it would maybe have to be something where Hugh can play that traditional rom-com role, but he isn't the lead man anymore. Yeah,
I mean, I wonder whether maybe it would be something like Love Actually again, something like that, where it's sort of an anthology film where there's lots going on and Hugh is just one part of many. But, before we move on to our final piece, I just want to talk to you about this. I was watching an interview with Hugh called The Actor's Side with Pete Hammond, and Hugh Grant said, and this was literally like last week that he gave this quote, he said, Hugh Grant said that his roles are getting weirder and weirder, and the offers are getting weirder and weirder. And the next one, he didn't want to go into because he's probably going to say yes to it, but he said it would be his weirdest role yet. Which, I mean, weirder than Heretic, weirder than Oompa Loompa. I mean, weirder than, I guess, Phoenix Buchanan. What could that be? I mean, is that this thing with Richard Curtis? Probably not. But it's very exciting to think about what could be next.
I can't even imagine what that would be, but
I know. I don't know how we can get weirder.
Yeah. That is exciting, though. It does put me a little bit on tenterhooks.
Don't you trust him now?
I do trust him. I trust him. But,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm slightly scared. But, it's worrying when we start getting weird for the sake of it. Do you know what I mean? But that's what we don't want. We want
That's when you start you start wondering whether he's really lost his marbles. Yeah,
exactly. Well, maybe he has lost his marbles. Let me tell you this final piece of Hugh Grant news. And
so much news.
Oscar, this is a big piece of news because, in the intro gambit where we talk about, if he's done a saucy tweet. He's done a saucy tweet.
Has he?
He's done a saucy tweet. Have you heard of Luan de l'Espace?
I can't say I have.
Luan de l'Espace. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it or who she is. She's in The Real Housewives of New York, right?
Okay.
And she's been in the press recently talking about how she went to a restaurant with her brother and they said that Hugh Grant was there, right? And they asked when they got to the restaurant if they could be seated next to Hugh Grant, at the table next to him. Luann calls this flirting 101, where she bumped her chair into his and turned around and apologised and said, "Can I buy you a shot? I feel so sorry." She reports him as saying, "Okay, but I'll come and have a shot with you if you do one with me." She says, and I quote, "Before you know it, we're taking shots and making out heavily at the table. My brother was like, 'I can't believe you're making out with Hugh Grant.' And I was like, 'Neither can I.'" Can I just say, if that's true, with your brother there, that's very weird. That's very weird that you just would pause kissing Hugh Grant for a minute and just go, isn't this mental, bro? Anyway, back to it, Hugh. I just find that crazy.
And did Hugh respond to this?
Hugh took to Twitter, now known as X, to say, steady on. I do remember meeting a charming Real Housewife of New York in a restaurant, but I'd like to stress it was about 15 years ago. I don't recall shots or kissing, but her memory might be better than mine. And that's all he's had to say on it. But I want that
interesting
feels
that
like
he's
him...
engaged.
Exactly. But yeah. And I wonder whether maybe he had to shoot that one down. Obviously now with his wife and kids, maybe he had to just make sure that everyone knew that must have been years ago.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. Like, Hugh, I got Hugh's back on this one. I mean, he's not stupid enough to like start kissing some random person in a restaurant. You would think.
Well,
maybe 15 years ago. Maybe 20 years ago. Yeah,
exactly. But I just thought, you know what? We've actually finally got a saucy tweet. A tweet about him like getting with people.
That is very saucy, yeah.
We've got to mention it.
Wow, fit for Bridget Jones's Diary.
Exactly. Oh my God. We're fit for Bridget Jones's Diary. We cannot wait for the next installment. Another decade, another diary entry. Very, very exciting.
All I can say is there's going to be a disappointing Valentine's Day for our girlfriends.
Yeah, we're going to be nowhere in sight. We're going to be with our one true love, Hugh Grant. I really want Hugh Grant to listen to this podcast. I want him to hear exactly what you just said and go, oh my God, I need to file a restraining order. Maybe I'll go to there must be an Odeon in Fulham or Hammersmith or wherever he lives.
Fulham Broadway.
I've got to go. I'll go there, and because they might do one of those stunts where the actors go and watch it in a cinema with an audience, undercover. But I'm so wise to. I reckon I could recognise him by smell.
Okay, the restraining order's coming.
Yeah, right. Let's end this before we go too far. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. As always, please follow us on all the socials. We're on Instagram, TikTok.
Listen to our latest episode. Heretic is a banger, and go and see it.
It's a banger. Go watch the episode. Our episode. Go listen to our episode. Go watch the film. You're absolutely right. Talk about it with your friends. It's an absolute banger. Great film. Great discussion. Oscar, as always, thank you so much for joining me, and we will see everyone next time for some more Hughes news or a film review. Bye.
Always a pleasure. See you, Diggs.
This is the end of Hughes News. We hope you feel very Hughes News about Hugh Grant. Hughes News and everything is very Hughes News. And now it's time to say goodbye. Goodbye.
Hughes News is a Taking Hugh for Granted production and is produced, edited and presented by Diggory and Oscar Beardmore Gray. The producers of Taking Hugh for Granted would like to state that this podcast is in no way associated with the actor Hugh John Mungo Grant, nor does it endorse his views or represent him in any way. Instead, by creating this podcast, Oscar and Diggory hope to celebrate Hugh's illustrious career, reliving his old classics and shedding light on some of his hidden gems. Hugh, if you're listening, we hope you approve.